The massive alien ship hung in space like a dark mountain floating among the stars. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports that could destroy entire cities with a single blast. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge, his four yellow eyes staring at the small blue planet that spun slowly in front of him. Earth looked so peaceful from here. White clouds drifted over green and brown lands. The single moon cast pale light across the surface. Vextar had seen dozens of worlds like this one. All of them had fallen to his fleet within days. "Another primitive world," said Commander Kralsith, moving up beside his leader. "Their technology readings show they barely travel beyond their own moon. Chemical rockets and basic radio signals." "This should be easy," Vextar nodded. The Zephian Empire had crushed 17 different species in the past 100 years. Each time, the pattern was the same: send the surrender demand. Wait for the begging and pleading. Accept their submission. Strip their world of resources and move on to the next target. "Send them the standard message," Vextar ordered his communications officer. "Tell them they have 72 of their hours to surrender completely, or we will turn their world to ash." The officer's clawed hands moved across the control panel. The message went out on every frequency the humans used, translated into their major languages. The words were always the same, cold and final: submit or die. Give up your weapons. Accept occupation. Prepare for resource extraction on Earth. Deep beneath the White House, President Carolyn Baker sat at a long table surrounded by her advisors. The alien message played on the screens around them, the mechanical voice repeating the ultimatum over and over. "How long do we have?" she asked. General Peter Hayes looked at his watch. 68 hours now, Madam President." Baker studied the faces around the table. Secretary of Defense John Miller looked grim. CIA Director Kate Wilson had dark circles under her eyes from 3 days without sleep. They all knew this day might come eventually. "What do our satellites show us about their fleet?" Baker asked. 12 ships, reported Colonel Rick Barnes from the Pentagon. "The largest is over 3 miles long. Energy readings are beyond anything we've ever seen. Their weapons could crack the moon in half." Baker closed her eyes for a moment. Every person in this room knew the truth that the rest of the world did not. Earth was not as defenseless as it appeared. "Signal Dr. Lisa Morgan," Baker said quietly. "Tell her to come down here immediately." 20 minutes later, Dr. Morgan entered the room. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who held incredible secrets. "Madam President," Morgan said, taking her seat, "I assume you want to discuss the Titan project." The room fell silent. Even among these highly cleared officials, only a few knew the full scope of what humanity had been building in secret. "How ready are we?" Baker asked. Morgan opened a tablet and scrolled through data. "All shipyards are operational. The fleet is at full strength. Our pilots have been training for exactly this scenario. We can deploy within 6 hours of your order." "General." Hayes leaned forward. "Doctor, can you give us numbers? How many ships do we actually have?" Morgan's smile was cold. "General, we have been preparing for this day for 23 years. The Zephyrians think they're facing a primitive species with chemical rockets. They have no idea what's waiting for them." The truth was staggering. Hidden throughout the solar system, in the asteroid belt and behind distant moons, massive shipyards had been building Earth's real defense fleet. Not dozens of ships, but thousands. Not primitive weapons, but technology that pushed the limits of known physics. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, the hours passed slowly. Admiral Vextar expected the usual response by now. Frantic radio signals. Begging for mercy. Offers to negotiate. Desperate attempts to buy more time. Instead, there was nothing. Complete silence from the blue world. "Admiral," said Kralseth, checking his instruments again. "We are receiving no response from the planet. No communications at all. Vextar frowned. In all his years of conquest, no species had simply ignored his ultimatum. Fear always drove them to respond somehow. Perhaps their primitive communication. Systems are broken, suggested the communications officer. Should we repeat the message? No, Vextar replied. Silence is their answer. They choose to resist. The alien admiral moved to the main display, which showed the peaceful Earth spinning below. Soon it would be a blackened ruin, another example of what happened to species that defied the Zephyrian Empire. Move the fleet into attack formation. He ordered. Prepare to begin bombardment of their major population centers. The 12 alien ships began to spread out around Earth like predators surrounding prey. Each vessel was a masterpiece of destruction, armed with plasma cannons that could boil oceans and particle beams that could slice continents in half. On Earth, the countdown continued. President Baker had not slept in 2 days. Reports came in from around the world as governments prepared their populations for what might come. Most people still believed they were facing impossible odds with primitive weapons, but in the hidden command centers, in the secret facilities that officially did not exist, a different kind of preparation was taking place. Dr. Morgan stood in the main control room of the Titan project, watching as thousands of technicians made final checks on systems that had cost more than the GDP of entire nations. All stations report ready, called out Chief Engineer Mike Thompson. Quantum drives are online. Weapon systems are charged. Pilots are standing by. Morgan nodded and picked up a secure phone that connected directly to the president. Madam. President, we are ready to deploy on your command. Baker's voice was steady despite the weight of the moment. Doctor, the alien fleet is moving into attack position. They will begin firing in less than an hour. Understood. Are you giving the authorization? There was a pause. Baker knew that when she gave this order, humanity would reveal its greatest secret to the universe. There would be no going back. Yes, she said finally. Signal all Titan stations. Tell them it's time to show these aliens what Earth's children can really do. The order went out across encrypted channels to every hidden base, every secret shipyard, every cloaked station. In the asteroid belt, massive doors began to open. Behind the far side of the moon, entire fleets powered up their engines as Admiral Vextar watched the final minutes count down on his display. The humans had chosen silence. Soon they would learn the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. Begin charging the main guns, he commanded. Target their largest cities first. That usually breaks their spirit quickly. The alien weapons began building energy, preparing to rain destruction on the world below. But as the countdown reached its final moments, something impossible began to happen in the space around Earth. The emptiness itself began to shimmer. The space around Earth rippled like water disturbed by a thrown stone. Admiral Vextar stared at his displays in confusion as his sensors registered impossible readings. Energy signatures were appearing from nowhere, growing stronger by the second. What is happening? He demanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the main screen. Before anyone could answer, reality itself seemed to tear open. Ships materialized from empty space as if they had been hiding behind invisible curtains. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of vessels emerged from what appeared to be folded space itself. Commander Kralseth's voice cracked with disbelief. Admiral, I count over 3,000 ships appearing around the planet. Their energy signatures are completely unknown. The human fleet was magnificent and terrifying. Sleek destroyers that looked like silver arrows hung motionless in space. Massive cruisers bristled with weapon systems that defied known physics. Fighter squadrons moved in perfect formation like schools of deadly fish. And at the center of it all was a battleship so large it dwarfed even the Zephyrian flagship. The black hull of the human command ship absorbed light like a hole in space. Along its bow, gleaming letters spelled out USS Leviathan. The vessel was over 4 miles long, its surface covered in weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Jake Morrison stood calmly at the center of controlled chaos. Officers called out reports from stations around him, but his enhanced hearing let him process dozens of conversations at once. "All Titan fleet elements are in position," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Chun from her sensor station. "Cloaking systems are disengaged. We're showing them everything we have." Morrison nodded. His cybernetic implants let him interface directly with the ship's systems, feeling the Leviathan's massive engines as if they were his own heartbeat. Around him, the bridge crew worked with mechanical precision, their movements enhanced by years of genetic and neural modification. "Admiral," called Captain Susan Parker from the destroyer USS Phantom, her voice coming through the quantum communication network. "Enemy weapons are still charging. They're preparing to fire on Earth." Morrison's enhanced reflexes processed information at superhuman speed. Through the ship's sensors, he could feel the alien vessels like a predator sensing prey. Their weapons were primitive compared to what humanity had built, but still dangerous enough to kill millions if they reached the planet. "Open a channel to the alien flagship," he ordered. The communications officer's fingers danced across holographic controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Morrison's image appeared on screens throughout the Zephyrian fleet. The human looked calm, almost pleasant, but his eyes held the coldness of deep space. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute authority. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. You wanted Earth's response to your ultimatum. Here it is." Admiral Vextar stared at the human face on his screen. The being looked so ordinary, so fragile. But the ships surrounding his fleet told a different story. The energy readings from the human vessels were impossible. Their technology appeared to be centuries beyond what intelligence reports had suggested. "How did you hide this fleet from our scouts?" Vextar demanded. "Our sensors detected no ships of this size." Morrison's smile was cold. "Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. We've been watching your empire for over a century. Admiral, we know what you do to other species. We prepared accordingly." The truth was even more staggering than the alien could imagine. Hidden throughout the solar system, humanity had built shipyards that could construct vessels using matter itself as raw material. The technology came from decades of secret research, funded by a coalition of every major nation on Earth. "Impossible," Kralsith whispered, studying his sensor readings. "These ships use power sources we don't recognize. Their hulls are made from materials that shouldn't exist." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Morgan watched the confrontation from her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, technicians monitored the performance of technology that pushed the boundaries of known science. "Quantum drives are operating at maximum efficiency," reported Chief Engineer Mike Thompson. "All ships are maintaining perfect formation synchronization." "What about the neural link systems?" Morgan asked. "Fully operational. The pilots are integrating flawlessly with their vessels. Response time is under 10 microseconds." Morgan smiled grimly. The Titan project had not just built better ships. It had created better humans. Every pilot in the fleet had volunteered for genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement. They did not just fly their ships, they became one with them. In space, Admiral Morrison felt the alien weapons reaching critical charge. Through his connection with the Leviathan's AI, he could sense the hostile intent radiating from the Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral," whispered the ship's quantum intelligence directly into his mind, "enemy weapons will reach firing capacity in 37 seconds. Morrison's enhanced consciousness processed tactical data at the speed of light. In the time it took a normal human to blink, he had analyzed thousands of possible battle scenarios and selected the optimal response. "All ships implement defensive pattern Omega," he commanded across the quantum network. Show them what Earth's children can do when threatened. The human fleet moved with impossible precision. Ships that had been motionless suddenly accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, their quantum drives bending spacetime itself. The movement was so fast that the Zephyrian sensors could barely track them. They're moving faster than light without jump drives, Kralseth reported in amazement. How is that possible? Admiral Vextar watched in growing horror as the human vessels repositioned themselves around his fleet. They moved like living creatures, responding to threats before his weapons could even lock onto them. Fire all weapons, he screamed. Destroy them before they can attack. The Zephyrian plasma cannons discharged, sending beams of superheated energy toward the human ships. But the vessels were no longer where they had been. They appeared around the alien fleet like ghosts their own. Weapons already locked onto target, Morrison felt the alien weapons fire through his connection to the ship's sensors. The beams passed harmlessly through empty space where his fleet had been microseconds before. Your turn, he said quietly. The human fleet opened fire, and space itself seemed to scream. Beams of coherent energy that could slice through matter. At the quantum level lanced out from thousands of ships. Missiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously streaked toward their targets. Torpedoes that aged whatever they touched to dust in seconds followed close behind. The Zephyrian shields, which had withstood the fury of entire planetary defense systems, collapsed like tissue paper. The first alien dreadnought simply ceased to exist, its atoms scattered across 1,000 cubic kilometers of space. Impossible, Vextar breathed, watching his mighty fleet being torn apart by weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. But Admiral, Morrison was just getting started. For 23 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. Every calculation, every simulation, every training exercise had led to this confrontation. The universe was about to learn why Earth's children did not negotiate with bullies. The space around Earth's moon turned into a storm of light and destruction. Human weapons tore through the Zephyrian fleet like knives through paper. Admiral Vextar watched in horror as his second dreadnought exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness. Shields down to 30%, shouted his tactical officer. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Vextar gripped his command chair as the flagship shook under the impact of human weapons. These beams were unlike anything in his empire's arsenal. They seemed to cut through matter itself, ignoring armor and shields as if they were not there. Return fire, he screamed. All ships, target their command vessel. The remaining Zephyrian ships turned their guns on the massive black battleship at the center of the human formation. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains fired at full power, sending streams of superheated energy toward the USS Leviathan. Admiral Morrison felt the alien weapons targeting his ship through his neural connection. The beams struck the Leviathan's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that worked on principles the Zephyrians did not understand. Shields holding at 98%, reported Lieutenant Commander Chun. Enemy weapons are having no effect. Morrison nodded. Humanity's defensive technology was built on quantum field manipulation, creating barriers that existed in multiple dimensions. The alien weapons were powerful, but they could only attack in normal space. All destroyers, execute attack pattern Delta, Morrison commanded. Cruisers, provide covering fire. Fighters, go for their weapon systems. The human fleet moved like a single organism. Destroyers darted between the alien ships, their speed so great they appeared as silver streaks against the black of space. Cruisers hung back, sending precision strikes that disabled enemy weapons with surgical accuracy. Fighter squadrons swarmed over the Zephyrian hulls like angry insects. Captain Susan Parker guided her destroyer through the chaos, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge plasma bolts that would have vaporized her ship. Through the quantum network, she could feel the positions of every other human vessel, their movements coordinated by artificial intelligence that could process millions of calculations per second. "Phantom to Leviathan," she reported. "We've disabled the weapons on 3 enemy ships. They're dead in space." "Acknowledged, Phantom," Morrison replied. "Continue the attack." Commander Kralseth stared at his displays in disbelief. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision, their weapons striking with deadly accuracy. His Empire's mighty fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. "Admiral," he said, his voice shaking, "we've lost 6 ships. The remaining vessels are heavily damaged. We need to retreat." Vextar's 4 eyes burned with rage. His empire had never been defeated, never been forced to flee from battle. The idea that these primitive humans could destroy his fleet was beyond acceptance. "Never!" he roared. "Signal the fleet. Prepare the planet killer weapon." Kralseth. Face went pale. The planet killer was their ultimate weapon, a device that could crack a world's core and turn it into a ball of molten rock. It was only used when conquest was impossible and total destruction was the only option. "Admiral, if we use that weapon, we'll destroy everything on the planet. There will be nothing left to conquer." "Then so be it," Vextar snarled. "If we cannot have this world, no one will." Deep in the Zephyrian flagship, massive generators began to power up. Energy flowed through conduits the size of subway tunnels, building to levels that could shatter continents. The weapon had been used only twice in the Empire's history, both times turning inhabited worlds into lifeless rocks. On Earth, President Baker watched the battle from her command center. The alien fleet was clearly losing, but her military advisors looked worried. "Madam President," said General Hayes, "our satellites are detecting massive energy buildup in the enemy flagship. They're charging some kind of super weapon." Baker felt ice in her veins. "How much time do we have?" "Unknown. But the energy levels are beyond anything we've ever seen." In space, Admiral Morrison felt the change through his ship's sensors. The alien flagship was drawing power from its engines, its hull beginning to glow with barely contained energy. "Athena," he spoke to the ship's AI. Analysis of the enemy weapon. The quantum intelligence responded instantly in his mind. "Planet killer class weapon, Admiral. If fired at full power, it will crack Earth's core and render the planet uninhabitable." Morrison's enhanced consciousness processed the threat in microseconds. The Zephyrians were preparing to destroy Earth rather than accept defeat. He could not allow that to happen. "All ships, implement Titan Protocol 7, he commanded across the network. This is not a drill. The response was immediate. Every human vessel in the fleet began to glow as they activated systems that had never been used in battle. Weapons that existed only in theoretical physics powered up, their energy signatures making space itself ripple with distortion. "Admiral," reported Captain Parker from her destroyer, "all ships are ready for Protocol 7. We're standing by for your command." Morrison felt the weight of the moment. Protocol 7 was humanity's most powerful weapon, a technology so dangerous. It could only be used once. If he gave this order, the Zephyrians would learn why Earth's children were not to be threatened. "You want to destroy our world?" he said, his voice carrying across all frequencies. "Let us show you what happens when you threaten humanity's home." The Leviathan's hull began to shift and change, panels sliding away to reveal weapons that bent the laws of physics. Around the human fleet, space itself started to warp as energy levels climbed beyond comprehension. "Admiral," Vextar felt his ship shudder as the planet killer reached critical charge. In seconds, he would fire the weapon that would turn the blue world below into a ball of fire and ash. "Planet killer at full power," reported his weapons officer. "Ready to fire." "Fire!" Vextar screamed. The weapon discharged, sending a beam of pure destruction toward Earth. The energy lance was powerful enough to boil oceans and crack continents, unstoppable by any known defense. But Admiral Morrison was ready. "Fire the Titan array," he ordered, "every human ship in." The fleet discharged their weapons at the same moment, but not at the Zephyrian vessels. Instead, their energy beams converged on a single point in space, creating something that should not exist. An artificial black hole formed in the path of the alien weapon, its gravity well so intense it bent light itself. The planet killer beam struck the singularity and was caught, twisted, and redirected back toward the alien fleet with 10 times its original power. The effect was immediate and devastating. The redirected energy struck the Zephyrian ships like the fist of an angry god, vaporizing them in seconds. Only the flagship survived, its hull cracked and burning, its crew barely alive. Admiral Morrison materialized on the bridge of the enemy ship, his form flickering as teleportation technology stabilized around him. He stood before the surviving aliens, his enhanced physiology allowing him to breathe their atmosphere. "Your empire made a mistake," he said calmly. "You thought Earth was defenseless. You were wrong." Admiral Vextar lay on the twisted metal floor of his bridge, green blood seeping from cuts across his forearms. The air tasted of smoke and burned electronics. Emergency lights cast red shadows over the wreckage of what had once been the pride of the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Morrison stood over him like a statue carved from stone. The human's enhanced body showed no signs of strain, despite the teleportation across space. His uniform was spotless, his breathing steady, his eyes as cold as the void between stars. "How?" Vextar gasped, struggling to sit up. "Your species was primitive. Our scouts reported chemical rockets and basic radio signals. You were supposed to be decades away from space travel." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. We've been watching your empire for over 100 years, Admiral. We knew this day would come." Commander Kralseth crawled from beneath a fallen beam, his right arm hanging useless at his side. "Impossible. No species develops technology that fast. It takes thousands of years to advance from basic chemistry to faster-than-light travel." "You're right," Morrison replied. "It does take thousands of years if you develop it naturally, but we had help." The human admiral activated a holographic display from a device on his wrist. Images appeared in the smoky air, showing the history that the Zephyrians had never suspected. "In 1924, your empire's first scout probe entered our solar system," Morrison explained. "It was damaged and crashed on our moon. We found it 73 years later during our first lunar missions." Vextar's eyes widened in shock. "The probe from the Kethran expedition. It was reported lost in a solar storm. Lost to you, perhaps, but not to us." Morrison gestured, and the hologram showed human scientists working over alien technology in underground laboratories. "Your probe contained complete technical specifications for faster-than-light communication. We reverse-engineered it." The images changed, showing massive construction projects hidden throughout the solar system, shipyards built inside asteroids, research stations concealed behind planets, generation ships disguised as space junk floating in the outer system. "Once, we could listen to your communications. We learned about your empire. We discovered what you did to other species. The planets you burned, the billions you killed." Morrison's voice grew harder with each word. "We realized Earth would be a target eventually." Kralseth stared at the holographic displays in horror. "You've been preparing for war for a century?" "Longer," Morrison corrected. "The Titan project officially began in 1997, but the groundwork was laid decades earlier. Every major nation on Earth contributed. Scientists, engineers, resources, volunteers. We built everything in secret." The hologram showed the truth that had been hidden from the universe. Massive industrial complexes built inside hollow asteroids. shipyards that could construct vessels using quantum matter assembly, research stations where humans volunteered for genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement. The ships you fought today were built over 23 years, Morrison continued. Each one represents the combined knowledge of our greatest minds. The weapons use principles of physics that your scientists haven't even theorized. Admiral Vextar felt his world crumbling around him. His empire's intelligence networks had completely failed. They had seen primitive rockets and assumed Earth was helpless. They had never detected the massive industrial infrastructure hiding throughout the solar system. The pilots who destroyed your fleet, Morrison said, volunteered to become something more than human. Genetic enhancement gave them faster reflexes and stronger bodies. Cybernetic implants let them interface directly with their ships. Neural networking allows them to think and fight as one organism. The images showed training facilities where humans learned to pilot ships with their minds. Medical centers where volunteers underwent procedures that would transform them into living weapons. Command centers where artificial intelligences coordinated fleets across impossible distances. Why show us this? Kralseth asked weakly. Why not just kill us? Morrison deactivated the hologram and studied the broken aliens. Because dead enemies can't carry messages. Your empire needs to understand what happened here today. Through this shattered viewport, the human fleet maintained perfect formation around Earth. Thousands of ships that shouldn't exist, armed with weapons that violated known physics, crewed by enhanced humans who had dedicated their lives to protecting their world. What happens now? Vextar whispered. Now you return to your empire, Morrison replied. You tell them that Earth is under the protection of humanity. You explain what our species is capable of when threatened. You make it clear that any attack on our world will be met with total destruction. Morrison activated his communicator. Leviathan, prepare to beam me back. Also, repair the alien ship's engines and life support. Give them enough fuel to reach the edge of our system. The response came immediately. Understood, Admiral. The aliens will be able to travel, but their weapon systems will remain offline. Vextar struggled to his feet, using a broken console for support. Your leaders will let us leave? After we came here to destroy your world? Our leaders understand something your empire doesn't, Morrison said. Sometimes mercy is more terrifying than violence. Sometimes letting an enemy live to tell the story is more effective than killing them. The human admiral's form began to shimmer as the teleportation beam locked onto him. Admiral Vextar, you came here expecting to find a primitive species. That would beg for mercy. Instead, you found humanity. Learn from this experience. Morrison vanished in a column of light, leaving the aliens alone on their damaged bridge. Around them, the ship's systems came back online as human technology. Repaired the most critical damage. Emergency power restored lighting and air circulation. The engines hummed back to life. Admiral, Kralseth said quietly, what do we tell the High Command? Vextar looked out at the human fleet, their ships gleaming like stars against the darkness. Each vessel represented technology beyond his understanding, crewed by beings who had chosen to become weapons in defense of their world. We tell them the truth, he said finally. We tell them that Earth is not to be touched, ever. The Zephyrian flagship slowly turned away from Earth, its damaged hull trailing vapor into space. Behind them, the human fleet maintained its watch, ready to defend their world against any threat that might come from the vast darkness. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching the alien ship limp toward the edge of the system. Around him, his crew began standing down from combat alert, but their ships remained ready for battle. Think they'll listen? Asked Lieutenant Commander Chen. Morrison's enhanced consciousness processed thousands of variables in an instant. Some will, others won't. When they come back, we'll be ready. The message would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Earth was protected by something far more dangerous than any weapon. It was protected by humanity. 3 months later, the damaged Zephyrian flagship limped into the home system of the Empire. The great ship that had once been the terror of 17 conquered worlds now looked like a broken toy. Its hull was scarred and twisted, its weapons destroyed, its crew forever changed by what they had witnessed at Earth. Admiral Vextar stood before the High Command, the ruling council of the Zephyrian Empire. 12 ancient beings sat on thrones carved from black stone, their multiple eyes fixed on him with cold judgment. They had built their power on conquest and fear, ruling over dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. "Explain your failure," commanded Supreme Leader Zarthok, his voice echoing through the massive chamber. "How did a single primitive world destroy our third fleet?" Vextar took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this moment during the long journey home, knowing that his words might determine the fate of the entire empire. "The humans are not primitive," he said clearly. "They have been preparing for our arrival for over 100 years. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Angry murmurs rippled through the council chamber. The idea that any species could be more advanced than the Zephyrian Empire was almost unthinkable. "Impossible," snarled Council Member Thekvar. "Our intelligence reports showed chemical rockets and basic electronics. They had barely reached their own moon." "They wanted us to see that," Vextar replied. "While we watched their primitive surface technology, they were building a fleet in secret. Thousands of ships hidden throughout their solar system, armed with weapons that can bend space itself." He activated a recording device, showing the council the battle that had destroyed his fleet. The holographic images filled the chamber with scenes of human ships moving faster than light, weapons that ignored shields and armor, and the terrible moment when their own planet killer had been turned back against them. Supreme Leader Zarthok leaned forward, his 4 eyes studying the display. "How many ships did they have?" "Over 3,000 that we could count," Vextar answered. "But their leader implied they had more. Many more." The council fell silent. The entire Zephyrian Empire had fewer than 2,000 ships spread across all their territories. The idea that one world could field a larger fleet was shocking. "What of their defenses?" asked Council Member Velinat. "Could we break through with our entire armada?" Vextar shook his head. "Their shields operate on quantum principles we don't understand. Our most powerful weapons had no effect. And their pilots—" He paused, remembering the superhuman speed and coordination of the human crews. "They have enhanced themselves. Faster. Reflexes, cybernetic implants, direct neural connection to their ships. They fight as one mind." Commander Kralseth stepped forward to support his admiral's report. His arm was still in a healing brace, a visible reminder of their defeat. "The humans could have destroyed us completely," he told the council. "Instead, they chose to let us live and return home. Their admiral said they wanted us to carry a message." "What message?" Zarthok demanded. "That Earth is under human protection," Vextar replied. "That any attack on their world will result in total destruction of the attacking force. That their species does not negotiate with conquerors." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some council members called for immediate retaliation. Others demanded that the entire Imperial fleet be assembled for a massive assault on Earth. A few suggested negotiating with other empires to form an alliance against the human threat. Supreme Leader Zarthunk raised his hand for silence. "How many worlds have we conquered in the past century?" 17, Supreme Leader, answered Vextar. "And how many times have we faced serious resistance?" "Never, Supreme Leader." Zarthok stood slowly, his ancient form rising from the stone throne. "In 1,000 years of expansion, our empire has never retreated from a single world. We have never been defeated in battle. We have never met a species that could challenge our supremacy." He walked to the holographic display, studying the images of human ships with their impossible technology. Tell me, Admiral, what was your impression of their capabilities? Could they threaten our core worlds? Vextar felt ice in his veins. Supreme Leader, if the humans decided to attack us, I believe they could destroy our entire empire. Their technology is that advanced, and their numbers? Unknown, but potentially vast. The ships we saw were just their defensive fleet. We have no intelligence on their offensive capabilities or how many worlds they may have colonized in secret. The Supreme Leader nodded slowly. For the first time in his long life, he faced an enemy that might actually be stronger than his empire. The choice before him was simple: risk everything in a war they might lose, or accept that the universe had changed. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Earth and its solar system are declared off-limits. No Zephyrian vessel is to enter human space under any circumstances. Supreme Leader, protested Council Member Thekvar, we cannot show weakness. If other species learn that we retreated from one world, it will encourage rebellion throughout the Empire. Zarthok's eyes glowed with cold fire. Better to appear weak than to be destroyed utterly. The humans have made their position clear. We will respect their territory and hope they respect ours. Meanwhile, back at Earth, Admiral Morrison stood in the command center of the Titan project, watching long-range sensors that tracked movement throughout the local galactic region. The network of monitoring stations had been expanded since the battle, reaching deeper into space than ever before. Any word from the Zephyrian home system? Asked Dr. Lisa Morgan, joining him at the main display. Our deep space probes picked up increased military communications 3 days ago, Morrison reported. But no fleet movements toward Earth. I think they got the message. Dr. Morgan studied the tactical display, showing the positions of human defensive fleets. And the other empires? The Kethrans? The Vorthan Republic? All showing increased intelligence-gathering activities in this sector, Morrison replied. Word is spreading that something significant happened here. They're trying to figure out what. Let them wonder, Morgan said with satisfaction. The longer they spend guessing about our capabilities, the longer Earth stays safe. Morrison nodded, but his enhanced consciousness was already processing new scenarios. The battle with the Zephyrians had been just the beginning. Other hostile empires would test Earth's defenses eventually. Some might try diplomacy first. Others would attack without warning, but humanity was ready. They had spent over a century preparing for this moment, building ships that could travel between stars, training soldiers who could think at superhuman speeds, developing weapons that could reshape reality itself. The age of human expansion was beginning. Earth's children had looked into the dark void of space and decided to build something better than fear. They had created hope backed by overwhelming force, mercy supported by terrible weapons, and peace protected by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The universe would never be the same.